by Roosevelt was posted on a telephone pole at the end of the block of my home, you know. And so my parents and I went down and read it, and it said that we were to be incarcerated. It didn't say where we would go, but they said to take your clothing and bedding and, of course, your toiletries. And so we packed all those things. And they also said bring dishes and silverware, but we didn't have to have that. They supplied it. And they told us to register to go. So my father used my his office address. He had an office in Little Tokyo because he was an insurance broker. So he and his good friend, who also was an insurance broker, they shared an office space. And so they used the office space address to go into being incarcerated, so we would be together. Because some of the people in my neighborhood went to Pomona Assembly Center instead of Santa Anita. And so our friends and I, my family, were incarcerated together in Santa Anita Racetrack. And I was very fortunate, as I was telling the girls, that I was able to live in a newly built barrack instead of a stable, where the first people that went had to live in a stable. And the stable was just horrible because it had such a smell to it, you know. And it was summer, so you can imagine it was just horrible. And however, like I was telling the girls, they built the barracks with green wood, and it hadn't been seasoned, so it shrank during our stay. And we could see our neighbors eventually. We could hear everything anyway, you know. So, so my father hung a sheet between the two rooms so that they couldn't see us and we couldn't see them.
That's smart.
Okay. And then some of the knots in the wood popped out. And this is a knot from one of the planks of wood. And my friend fashioned it into heart shape. And it's a necklace that I wear once in a while. And this is another one made from a knot. And it was too short to put I. My name is Toshi. My full name is Toshiko, but I go by Toshi. And this is from a knot. And then, as I was telling the girls, we had to shower where the horses were showered. There was no partition between the shower heads, and so we all had to be naked together. All the women, they put one partition, so the women were on one side and the men were on the other side. And anyway, the horses didn't mind being showered with muddy feet, but we had to shower and stand in muddy water. So we made wooden clogs out of scrap wood. Of course, this is a miniature one, but we made clogs, shower clogs, to use to stand in the shower. And it was quite embarrassing because I was not used to showering with you boys in the gym. You shower together and everything, but
Ethan, is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, in sport
Yeah.
teams, yeah.
but we girls hardly ever did that. So it was so embarrassing. But anyway, I wrote a little story that ended up being published.
Boys' turn to read.
Hmm?
Oh, they're not gonna read it. Dang it.
Excuse me?
So anyway, the girls can tell you about it. Okay. And I can't remember how many people were incarcerated in Santa Anita, but I know it must have been over 5,000 people. Anyway, we all went to a mess hall and to have our meals. And our breakfast was usually oatmeal or dry cereal and toast and coffee. And the coffee was terrible. It was some kind of ersatz coffee. And I ended up being a waitress, but my title wasn't waitress. It was gopher, because I would go for toast or whatever empty bowl happened to occur, and you go for. So we nicknamed it Gopher. And I earned $8 a month doing that. And some of the jobs, the middle rank job was paid $16, and the top job, executive jobs, paid $19 a month, which were dentists and nurses and doctors. They were only paid $19 a month. We did have a store where we could buy our toiletries, like toothpaste and toothbrushes and things like that. And this is our cameras were confiscated after the war. And so and then the police department told us that we have to turn in any guns and swords. So that's what we did. And also cameras. And so that's the reason why we have no picture of Santa Anita. So this is somebody who was in camp, drew this sketch,
Yeah, I sent it around.
which
Well, we actually watched it
Oh.
on YouTube.
Oh, okay, so here.
that's the grandstand, you know.
Mhm.
And we use the grandstand for our meetings and our church services, and the front here is slanted. It's on a slant, and so you know, the people watching the horse races could stand and see the horses running, and so they put it on the slant so if you were all standing on a level, some people were shorter and couldn't see. So, they put it on a slant. So we held some of our dances there, and you can imagine what it was like dancing on a slant floor. Okay.
What was your everyday life?
Camp wasn't all bad. We did have fun, and they did play baseball, and they did some running around the track, and so anyway, I stayed there. Let me see. I went in April, May, June, July. So 4 months exact, about. And I went to a permanent camp in Wyoming, which was called Heart Mountain. And this is the one about Heart Mountain. However, would you like to ask me more questions about Santa Anita?
May I just ask, how were you guys transported from Santa Anita to Heart Mountain? I'm curious about that.
By train.
Oh. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Train.
Yes, and they used a World War I vintage train, and it was a very old train, and it had seats upholstered with Excelsior, which is shredded wood. Very hard, uncomfortable seats. It didn't recline. You had to sit bolt straight. And we had to sleep bolt straight.
Oh, that's
There was no reclining. And it took us 4 days and 3 nights to get there. It was agony. And they made us pull the shades down every time we went into a station. Like I know we were in the Denver station. And at any rate, it rained very hard one day while we were going there, and the tracks got so inundated with water they had to sideline us for half a day until they could reroute us to avoid the flooded area, So that's why it took us 4 days and 3 nights to get there from Santa Anita. And Santa Anita has train tracks, because they bring in horses with trains. So Santa Anita has a train track in their compound, So we just walked to get on the train.
Oh, the train track is in the Arboretum. Like part of it.
Is it really?
Yeah, there was
Oh,
part of it in
wow.
the Arboretum.
Anything else you want to ask me about Santa Anita? Oh, yes. There was no wash tub to do our washing. There was only a long sink, wooden sink with spigots with hot and cold water. So we had to buy our own wash tub. And so Sears Roebuck and Montgomery Ward mail order stores really did a landslide business, because my father ordered a galvanized wash tub and a scrub board, and we had to do our washing by hand, all our washing by hand. And my father even bought us a child's red flyer wagon because those galvanized tubs weigh quite a bit, you know. So we put our galvanized tub on the wagon and the washboard, and everyone could afford to buy the galvanized tub and washboard. So my parents' washboard and wash tub was borrowed by many people. Yeah. It was used very, very much, yes. And like I said, we all had to line up to eat in the mess hall. And I can't remember how many we had, but they were quite a few mess halls. And you had to have a ticket with a right color. There was the yellow mess, a green mess, a red mess, they were called, you know. And at first, they didn't do that. And the young boys that were so hungry would go from mess hall to mess hall, and we would run out of food. So they made it so that you couldn't do that. You had to have a ticket, and you had to be punched. Okay.
That reminded me of you and Sardi's.
I'm just curious, what were your views on Americans during your time in the camp? Your views on Americans during the camp?
Did it?
What was your views of Americans when you were in the concentration camp?
Were you what?
No, what were your views on Americans when you were in the concentration camp?
Oh, well, we had some very nice Americans. I mean, you mean Caucasian. You mean Caucasian, don't you? Yes. We had some very nice Caucasian friends. One friend even, she was my mother's mentor, came and brought us fruits and cookies and things to eat because our food was horrible. Like I was telling the girls, we had dry cereal or oatmeal for breakfast and toast and apple butter. We had apple butter every single morning, and apple butter is something you spread on toast. And we had the ersatz coffee, which was horrible. And for lunch, we would have mostly canned food. And so when we finally went to the permanent camp, we grew our own vegetables, fresh food, so we could have fresh food to eat. Later we had showers with stalls, but no door. And our bathrooms, the men's side didn't have any partitions, so everyone used the commode right out in the open. You can see everybody. The men's side. The women's side had partitions between each commode, but no doors. Any questions?
Actually, yeah. What what did you think of the guards in the prison site?
Well, the guards at Santa Anita were pretty kind. When we would go to the latrine, we call the bathrooms latrine, they would shine the lights on us so that we could see, you know. And then when we would go back to our barracks, they would shine it on. So, and my mother would even bow and say thank you. And then the guard up in the tower would flash his light saying, you know, you're welcome, like. uh,
Why don't you just ask?
You ask.
some of the guards at the permanent camps were not so kind. Some people got shot to death. Yeah. There was a grandfather at Manzanar camp here in California, and he went under the wire to retrieve a ball for his grandson, and he got shot.
I don't get this question.
What?
Let's see, let me.
Oh, were there any Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts at the camp?
Yes, in the permanent camp.
No.
Hmm.
So we
We
didn't have
had
any
Boy
in-
Scout and Girl Scout troops there.
So we didn't have any at San Anito.
I don't know if they might have, because they were in, some of the boys were in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts too, before they went in. They might have been able to hold their meetings and things.
Was there any form of dissent or quarrelsome behavior from the prisoners? And if so, what was the punishment if one was to dissent with the guards?
Well, there was one incident in Santa Anita where we were fed beans. What do you call that?
No meat.
Pork and beans. Canned pork and beans for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 2 days. And so the third day, we accepted our dish of pork and beans and turned it upside down and walked out on the table. So it was just dripping with, yeah. And so they called it a riot that we started. And there was some intervention by the Army. And then our food really improved. They found out that the stewards of our mess hall were selling our food on the black market. And the steward was fired, and our food did improve.
Like before you were sent to Santa Anita, how did you and your family react when you found out you were being incarcerated?
I'm sorry, I'm hearing loss.
Oh, sorry. How did you and your family react when you found out you were being incarcerated?
Well, my father was quite upset, but he said, well, we should not make waves, you know, and so he didn't, and we were incarcerated.
Were there like any horse races when you were at the camps?
What?
Were there any horse races during the
Oh,
time?
no horses, because we were living in
Oh.
the stall.
I thought they would have horses.
Absolutely no horses.
How old were you when you were released from all the concentration camp?
Well, I was 18, but I went out from Wyoming, my camp, and I went to Kansas City, Missouri, and went to college for 3 years. But I went back into the camp for 3 months during the summer vacation, the first year. And then the first year I was going to go home for Christmas, but I had applied to go to college, but I couldn't get out until the people at my college had their first midterms, you know. So I missed a whole section of history lessons. And so my history instructor said, Christmas vacation, I'll lecture you on what you missed. So I stayed at the school and was lectured on what I had missed. But the second Christmas, I went back to Wyoming, and so I know what winter is like in Wyoming, northern Wyoming. Oh, it is so cold. The first winter, I understand, was 38 degrees below zero. So you can imagine how cold it was.
Yeah, you were going there.
Yeah.
How did you and the community around you react when you were being released from the camp?
Well, it was hard because of the grocery store people and the drugstore people. Everybody knew that we were Japanese. So when my mother came back and she went to the store to buy groceries, they told her, we don't sell to Japs. So she had to take a bus and a streetcar and go down to Grand Central Market in Los Angeles, near Chinatown, to pass for a Chinese woman, hopefully, and buy her groceries.
Did you join any the Girl Scouts in the camps when you were there? Did you join the Girl Scouts?
No, because I only stayed there a very brief time. I went to college, remember?
Oh. Okay. And then did they provide you any clothing at all, or did you have to buy
Oh,
them yourself?
yes. They did provide us with World War I Navy peacoats because, you know, most of us were from California and we didn't have winter clothes. So they gave us World War I peacoats, and they were so thick and they were warm, but they didn't have any children's size. So some of the mothers cut up the peacoats, and they couldn't sew them on the sewing machine because the material was so thick it would break the needle. So they had to be sewn by hand.
What was your reaction when you heard about the news about Americans bombing Tokyo with the bombing
Well,
Japan?
war is war, you know. And My husband, whom I met in the permanent camp, he he volunteered to go into the army, and he was went to the military intelligence school to learn the Japanese army language, so he could become an interrogator for the U.S. Army. And that's the Congressional Gold Medal that he won.
Did other like young men in the Santa Anita racetrack follow a similar path as your husband did and join the U.S. military?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them did. Were they given any like special privileges for enlisting in the military, or were they treated the same as everyone else?
They were put in a segregated battalion. There were some Caucasian, officers, but the whole unit was all Japanese Americans.
Okay. Do you believe that like it was lawful that you and many other Japanese American citizens were put in these concentration camps simply
It
for
was
being Japanese?
entirely illegal.
Okay.
That was against the Constitution, because we were American citizens. The second generation were all American citizens, and we should have been offered due process of law, which is to not incarcerate us unless we had committed a crime or espionage, and none of us had. They didn't find one person that had.
Did the U.S. government ever give any amendments or reparations towards
Yes.
Japanese citizens?
Yes, we got reparations, but like my mother and father, they were both gone by then, but I really think that they should have gotten the reparations above everybody else,
When were these reparations given out? Do you remember in like which year?
1980, I believe.
Wow, it's like 40 years.
No, 84, I think. 1984, I believe. Yeah.
Can you tell us specifically what did you get as a result of these reparations? Like
20,000.
20,000?
Each person got 20,000.
Okay.
That was alive, but you couldn't get it for a person who had gone.
Right. Here you worded it. I'm like kind of lost in the wording.
I wonder how long it took you to type that whole thing, John.
Yeah, seriously.
I didn't type this. I didn't type this.
The wording is off. I was like,
This is not. I didn't type it.
I didn't touch that. Let me see.
wait, Hannah, you typed it right?
Yeah.
Alright, number 19.
Okay.
The wording is like, I was like, wait.
I don't think I typed that.
Okay. What they want to ask is, how do you feel now with the change of discrimination against Japanese people? Like, how do you feel on the change of discrimination on Japanese people? Like, do you feel like your children have more opportunities?
Oh, yes. And very much so. Yeah. There's still a glass ceiling, but
So, does your
like myself, I was a teacher, and I was one of the first Asian teachers employed by the LA Unified School District. Before the war, no Asians could become an elementary school teacher or junior high school teacher or high school teacher. They could teach in the universities, but they could not teach in elementary, high school, and so on.
So, what inspired you to write your book?
My daughter asked me.
Or your daughter asked you about your life, or she just oh
No, she just said, "Mom, you had such an interesting life that I want you to write it so that, her kids could learn about it and the grandchildren. And now I have a great grandbabies, 2 of them. So I hope they'll read it someday."
Do you meet any like high-ranking U.S. officials or
This is
military
it.
person? Did you meet any personnel, like military personnel or government?
Will you say
Oh,
that
excuse me.
again?
I'm so
I
sorry.
have my hearing
Of
loss.
course. Did you meet any like U.S. government officials or military personnel during your stay in the Santa Anita internment camp?
Oh, yes, and they were very good, especially in the Heart Mountain permanent camp. They were very kind, and they were understanding of our situation. My mother was brought over to this country by the Methodist Church. The Japanese immigrants came over in the early 1900s, and they established themselves, and then they called for picture brides because they were here. They couldn't meet any women, so they wrote letters to Japan, and they corresponded, and then the brides came over. A whole bunch of them came over, and some of the marriages didn't work. So these women didn't have any place to go when their marriages failed, And so the Methodist Church opened the Jane Couch Home, which was a shelter for abused women, and the orphan girls also from these marriages came to stay at this home, which my mother was director of. And so that's why I say that we had many Caucasian friends who were very kind to us all during this incident,
Were you and your fellow internment prisoners interviewed by the media? Was there media coverage in the Santa Anita racetrack? No.
I don't think so. I don't know.
So your story was not put in light during the time, but only after, right?
No, so many people didn't know about it. Yeah.
Did your feelings towards Americans?
This is a DVD, and it won 3 Emmys. David Ono of Channel 7, do you know? He's a newscaster. He made this documentary of my permanent concentration camp. And you can borrow that if you want, and if you'll send it back to me by mail.
Okay.
Could you do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
Yeah,
Oh, you've
Have you?
seen
I've
it.
seen it. Oh, I don't know. What
I have.
No, we haven't. We have
Oh,
not.
you have.
Yeah,
Okay,
with,
then no
yeah.
use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And the soldier it's in the documentary.
Mhm.
He was in my high school, and I knew him, and he liberated Dachau
Mhm.
concentration camp, where his sisters and his parents were interned still in the concentration camp in America while he was doing this. Isn't it ironic?
Did your feelings towards America remain the same, or did it change from back then? Did your feelings toward America remain the same, or did it change from back then?
Well, no. America is my country. You know. Yeah. We just have to adhere more to the Constitution and not break laws. I think our incident really saved the Muslims these days.
Can you explain what you mean by that analogy towards the Muslims, please? Like,
Well, you know, Norman Mineta, who was travel secretary during Bush's presidency, was incarcerated in my camp. And he said, let's not rashly incarcerate these Muslim people. And let's not do, what is that, what the police are doing now to the African Americans. What do you call that?
frisking? Frisking?
No.
Profiling. Profiling.
Profiling, yes. Mineta really emphasized not profiling the Muslim people, which I thought was the right thing to do.
What have you personally what have you personally learned or gained from this experience in the internment camp?
Well, I learned that we can cope, you know. Most of us did cope. And I wouldn't have seen Kansas City or experienced all these things had I not been incarcerated. And I really made some good friends at my college, and I still have some friends now from my college that I keep in contact with, you know. Of course, most of us are dying out now. I'm 90 years old, you know. So, this is my, wait a minute, no. This is my permanent camp, and we made a museum using like barracks, you see. But our barracks were covered with black tar paper, but this is steel, black steel, so it won't deteriorate. This is a picture of my permanent camp. Yeah. We had 10,700 in our camp, so you can imagine. And we did have a few Caucasian kids at our school because the administration families had children. And so after third pilgrimage or reunion of the camp. This is one of the wings of the museum, and this is a garden that was dedicated to my husband for being so instrumental in starting the agriculture project. And he had an excellent superintendent over him, and he was all for us making our growing our own food. And his name was Glenn Hartman. And this is my daughter and her husband, and my son, my grandson, and his wife, and this is my great-grandbaby. And this is the chairman of this museum. And this is my son. It looks like he's holding my great-grandbaby, but it's her holding. Uh-huh. And the plaque that says this garden is dedicated to Jim Ito is written on this stone. Okay. And this was the grand opening of the museum. It's quite a nice museum. And here's Boy Scouts during the incarceration. I don't know how I got this one off. Okay. This is my home in Los Feliz area.
Wait, what year was this? 19?
29, 28. You think? Thank you.
It's the name of it.
Yeah, we recovered this one. We recovered this question.
You actually? Oh, yeah, fine.
Have we
I think we covered everything.
covered more or less everything?
I think we covered most everything except maybe we want to finish on a note of what was any lasting memories that you have in the camp that you thought were special.
Well, I met my husband. Yeah, he was in charge of leaves. You know, you could leave the camp if you could, but you had to stay not on the east side of the country. You weren't able to go on the west coast, you know, the west coast states. But if you had someplace to go, you could always leave. You could even go to the East Coast, and they didn't care, you know. Because some of my friends did go to the East Coast. And at any rate, and so he got me out, and I didn't think anything about him, and he didn't think anything about me. And when it was time to go to Kansas City, he was able to get another girl, Marie Yamashita, and I, to go out of the camp. We were the first two people that left the camp. And so he came down to the gate to see us all. And we were both dressed up in high heel shoes and a nice dress and a coat, you know. So he took a second look. And when I came back that summer, he came over to ask me how school life was in Kansas City. And then he started dating me. That's how I ended up marrying him.
Any other question? I don't know.
I think all the questions have been answered. Alright,
How about some ice cream cones? It's a hot day, isn't it?